This is StRest. I'm Kerstin Lindquist, health coach, author, and Emmy award-winning TV host. I've committed to helping people reduce stress through impressive health science, attainable mindset change, and biblical truth. Let's have a real conversation with zero judgment and endless solutions that you can use. You aren't alone. You can do this. Let me help you reduce stress and make room for rest.
Hi, friends. Okay, so I was just in my schedule book. Do you guys have a schedule book or do you do it on your phone? You should totally do a schedule book and like crossing off dates and writing down things and putting in my to-do list. It's all very cathartic and it helps me bring calm to the chaos. And it was making me think of our guest. She is, I'm pretty sure, my oldest friend. So I've got a friend that I kind of knew when I was like probably 6 or 7 that I kind of keep up on Facebook, but Corie Clark is that girl from grade school we met in 5th grade that I have consistently kept in contact with. I love her like a sister. She has done everything from 3-day breast cancer walks with me to help me through the loss of my mother and infertility and adoption. We don't live anywhere near each other, but we still keep in contact. And she is the one who turned me on to paper planning. Since then, she has created an amazing business helping women find their purpose. And as we know, finding your purpose helps you reduce your stress. So let's go. Corie Clark, how are your children?
Amazing. And
are they all around you still?
Yeah. No, they are all in my home.
They're all in your home.
Yes.
And tell everybody how old they are and where you are.
We're in Franklin, Tennessee. My oldest Parker is 24. And then Morgan is 22, my daughter. And then my youngest Brody is 19. So
that
yes.
Kind of seems to me like that to me is living the dream. Like I want everybody, all my family to live in a compound together forever.
Yes. It's honestly totally fine. Obviously there are some days where I'm like, okay, like, can we just be alone? I've been doing this for 24 years. But no, they're like, we love our kids. We all get along well. We all like the same things for the most part. So it's fun. And I just feel like, we don't want to like rush them out if they like, we don't want them to go waste their money on paying like a huge expensive like rent or something, so we're good for now.
So I was telling everybody when I was introducing you before that you are probably my oldest friend that, I'm still connected to. Like I have some friends when I was super, super little that I see on Facebook, but you I actually talked to and we met, pre-high school. That's pretty impressive.
I know. I would agree. I think you're probably my oldest friend too. Yeah. I don't think there's anybody else besides like Facebook, but yeah. And I mean, like looking at the grand scheme of our life, we weren't like together very long before I moved. So we did pretty good, like keeping in touch pre-internet days.
Yeah. And even grade school, junior high, which is really when we connected, and then you moved away. One of my like core memories in my childhood is crying as your like car was pulling away, or maybe my car was pulling away and I was saying goodbye and you were moving away, because that's how it happened with Corie and I. Her family moved up north. We were all in California. But even since then, you have always kind of lived out. First of all, we went to a Christian school together. Quaker, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So we
friends,
were together
Christian
in our
school,
faith.
Yeah.
And you were always I felt like you always had your life together. You seem so confident in moving away as a child. You seem so confident in getting married young. You got married very young.
Yes. I wouldn't say I was confident in moving though. I was not happy about moving, but no, I wasn't. But I mean, what do you do? I was like 13.
Yeah. You got married. You had children young. You did a business. You raised children. You homeschooled children. I've always come to you for help for homeschooling children. So do you feel like you have been somebody who's been able to live out kind of a purpose-driven life since you were young?
I think so. I don't think I like really knew that, when I was young. I think part of like being the firstborn, I have 3 younger siblings. I babysat my younger siblings a lot when I was younger. So I don't know if it was kind of just like partly because of how I was raised, and then also just like what was in me. I kind of always, and part of it probably wasn't very healthy at the time. Like looking back, I was like obviously like a people pleaser and a perfectionist. So I think that probably had a lot to do with, like, it's interesting to hear you say that, like, what you remember of me, that I
Right.
was like, I wouldn't have really thought that about myself then. But yes, looking back, I think it probably was just partly like how I was raised and being the oldest child. And, you know, I was raised in a Christian home, so we had a very healthy home. I get along with my siblings and my parents really well. So I think that's probably just like a lot of it. And then as I got older, I started to realize like, wait, like we're all here for a reason, you know, and I need to like make sure I stay focused on that.
When did that happen? I always put you up at the top with, you were doing planning and journaling. You had the very first planner that I ever used. And when many people know that I will put my calendar on my phone, but I need paper. Like do I have one over here? Of course I do. Because it's never far from my life. I need to write everything down and have it in front of me. And I find such calm in that. It's the uncontrollable world, and I feel like I'm kind of controlling it. You were doing that before everybody else. You were.
I
It
mean,
wasn't very popular, at least.
It wasn't. And that was like, I do have to attribute like part of my success in the planner business to that. It was kind of like the beginning of finding cute planners, because I used to have to go into Staples and get like an ugly black, like at a glance, you know, like they were never cute. And then a lot of times I end up just kind of making my own. I would just buy a blank, you know, spiral notebook and kind of like, you know, draw out how I wanted it. And so, yeah, when I did launch the planner, there was only a handful of others on the market that were like pretty and functional and like made for, you know, a stay-at-home mom or a working mom. And so it was kind of at the forefront of that. Yeah.
And then you wrote a book, and then you went into coaching other women in this community, which is absolutely amazing. Now you're launching another book, which is super exciting.
Yes.
And I still look at you as that. Not only I'm blessed that you're my friend, but that person who, for the rest of us, for women, can help us figure out our purpose, live out our purpose. And something you've said to me in the past always stuck with me. It can change.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think anybody's like stays like the same. I think like our especially as Christian women, like our main purpose is to like worship God, to make his name known. Like obviously that won't ever change, but I think like our path to how we do that and like our individual like unique calling, it does change, because obviously like we grow, we mature, we go through different seasons. And so you don't want to like stay stuck in that season that you were in 10 years ago. You're a totally different person, and maybe God has something new for you, you know? And so I do think it changes.
Can helping kind of hone in on your purpose help us relieve stress in our lives?
Well, it's crazy because there's actually, for my new book, which is called The Purpose Project, I've been diving deep into like a lot of different studies. And so it actually is scientifically proven to like help relieve anxiety. Like people who have a purpose, who know their purpose and actually like start living that out, they have less anxiety, they have less stress. And so I think part of that is, for me at least, and what I help women with is like really, when you know your purpose, like you know the things you can let go of. And if you don't, like as women, you know, like we're saying yes to everything. We've got a million things to do, and we've got kids we're raising, and, you know, doing like the school drop off and sports and involved in church. There's a million things, and they could all be really good things. But if God hasn't asked you to do them, and if they aren't aligned with your purpose, like that can actually add to your stress. You know what I mean? So being busy and doing a lot of good things is not necessarily like the best thing for you.
Yeah. When you know your purpose, you know what you can let go of. That's huge.
Yeah.
Right there.
It is huge.
You can say no to something if you're filtering it through the lens of, okay, does it work within my purpose?
Right. And the more you do that, like the more confident you are in it. Like you don't feel bad. You know, I don't feel bad when I say no to something anymore. Like it's just like, no, sorry, like we're not doing that, you know? And it also helps with like decision fatigue. Like people have decision fatigue. We make so many decisions little micro decisions all day long. And when you already know like what your yes is and what your no is, like you don't have that decision fatigue like you do when you don't know your purpose.
I also love all the research part. And I read a study, I have to go back and find it because it was that good, but I read a study that gave the number of decisions that we are capable of making every single day. Like there is a cap. Our brains kind of shut down after making certain amount of decisions.
Mine still does. I don't want people to think like I'm just like in la la land. Like I still reach that cap.
But what's really interesting is with the invent of social media and our smartphones is you think that you're relaxing when you're scrolling social media, but actually when you're scrolling social media, you're making a million decisions. Do I like this? Do I want to move on? Do I want to like? Do I want to keep watching? Do I want to swipe? Do I want all those things? So scientifically, you do not relax when you're looking at social media because you're making so many decisions while you're looking at it.
Yeah, that is so true. That's so true. I mean, even for me, like I don't really like to go on social media to scroll, like to doom scroll. Sometimes I'll go on for inspiration or, just to kind of see what trends are like for my own business. And so, yes, then it's really a lot of decisions because I'm like, do I like this? Do I like that copy? Do I like that hook? Do I like that music? Like, what's making this go viral and what's making this not go viral? So it's so many decisions always.
That was so said like a creator. It wasn't like, do I like these colors? And do I like her? And it was like, do I like the hook? Do I like the copy?
Yes. I think I've always had that brain. And that's why, that's another reason when I started my business, it just kind of came naturally. Like I didn't go to school for this. I didn't I don't know. I didn't take any kind of graphic design classes. And so, but I've always been intrigued by what makes people do things, what makes people buy, why do people grab onto something and not to something else. So it's kind of always something I'm thinking about.
Tell people your background, kind of give Corie history in a nutshell.
Well, I was born and raised in Southern California in a Christian home, went to private school up until high school. We moved to Northern California for high school, and that is where I met my husband in high school, partly why we got married young, although we didn't start dating till after high school, but we went to the same youth group and we're friends with the same group of friends. So we kind of once we started dating, it was we already we already knew each other. Our families were friends and stuff. So we got married pretty quick, maybe a year and a half later. So yeah, I was a cheerleader and a dancer. And I loved I don't know, I loved being with people. I would say I'm a little bit more introverted now than I was then. I still love to be with people, but I also like to refuel alone or just with Ryan and read or, I need to shut things off from myself. And so I think that's something that changed. But, then we moved, we got married, had kids, stayed in Northern California for a while, and then moved back to Southern California in 2010. Or when did you left right after I got there?
Right.
When 2010, 2011?
I left in 11. Okay. Yeah.
So I think we got there in 2010.
To go to QVC. And right before that, we had a little bit of overlap together.
Yeah. So we lived in Southern California for 10 years and then moved to Tennessee in 2020. I homeschooled my kids and before it was cool.
Truly.
Before everybody was doing it.
Asking Corie for help. She was that family too. I was like, wow, how does she do that? And that's so far out. Now you're right. Everybody's doing it. But I remember when we went on our missions trip, I would ask you for help and
yeah,
amazing.
Thank you. It was not always easy. Absolutely not. But it was definitely worth it. So yeah. And then, moved here, all the kids. Parker was the only one who kind of didn't want to come. And then once he really figured out living on his own in California would have cost him a fortune, he decided to come. And the other two came and here we are.
And Corie is not only one of the most faith-filled people that I know, who I love, and even when we have those times when we don't see each other for a while or things like that, it's still text messages and emails when either of us are going through something hard and praying for each other. And it's just such a beautiful, wonderful relationship like that. But you also have always been able to help women find their purpose. So what does somebody do who just doesn't know? Where's the first place they start?
So obviously, I'm a huge believer in prayer and asking the Holy Spirit to guide you. But I do actually help women and have a process. So part of that is kind of like taking a look like deep inside, like, oh, I'm so sorry. Did you hear that? No?
No,
Okay.
I didn't. We
I
can
don't
always
know.
cut things.
Something must be open. I heard like a Facebook message or something. Okay, sorry. Taking like a look inside and really asking themselves, okay, like, what am I good at? Like, what am I actually just naturally good at? Because like, yes, we have spiritual gifts. And I think, if you don't know what your spiritual gifts are, you can always start with a spiritual gifts test. Like, it's not like it's, foolproof or anything, but it at least can help like guide you. You start to like recognize things about yourself, like, oh, actually, like I do have the gift of hospitality, or I do have a prophetic gift, whatever your spiritual gift might be. Spiritual gift tests are amazing, but actually, like, God actually did equip us all with like natural gifts and talents too. And so, just start thinking about the things like, what are you good at? What do people like ask you for help with? Like you just said, you looked to me for like homeschool advice. So it doesn't mean like I'm going to teach people how to homeschool all the time, but it was something that I was gifted in the fact that like I knew how to like balance it and knew how to figure out like what was actually important to us and what was, maybe not important to us, even though like the school system wanted it to be. You know what I mean? So there's different things that you're like naturally gifted at. And then there's things you're passionate about. And so usually like what I found in helping people and in myself is when you look at all of those things, there's usually like a little sweet spot in the middle. And that's like what you like can focus on. It's like you're really good at it. It's how you help other people and you're really passionate about it.
We get in the weeds a little bit with, okay, but this is my job. This is how I make money, but I'm not feeling filled up. So is it my purpose?
Right.
How do you approach that?
I think, well, like the perfect example, it's like, my husband, like he has an amazing job. It's not like what he wants to do the rest of his life. But I think in that, he can be like a light to the people he's with. Part of your purpose is actually doing work, like God put us here to like, work the land, to rule over the animals in the land. And so just because you might not feel like I'm not preaching and I don't have a podcast, I don't have a book, that doesn't mean you're not doing something that God created you for. So showing up, working hard. If you're married, like being faithful to your spouse and being a good husband or a good wife, raising your kids well, like that is your purpose. You know what I mean? And so it doesn't have to look like what Kerstin's doing or what I'm doing. And so, maybe you do have a longing to get out of your job and you can create a plan to do that, but you don't have to do it today. Like you can have a purposeful life going and working anywhere. You know what I mean?
Say that leading up to my departure from QVC in the last couple of months, it was probably a stirring in me for a good 3 or 4 years that maybe there was something different that I should be doing. I was at QVC for 13 years when I finally left. And I kept on going back to God and asking him. And he kept on saying pretty loud and clear, I'm using you in this space. And so then I check in again in 6 months to see are you still using me in this space? And yep, sure enough. And it wasn't just he was using me on television to talk to women in the faith space and the fitness space, but he was using me with inside the walls of a corporate building to help people there as well. And it took me being still enough, silent enough, getting through the busyness, because God's not going to shout through your busyness, to be able to be tuned in enough to him, to hear him finally, after we went on that missions trip, say, nope, now it's time. And actually, it was at that point that I was like, but God, aren't we using me here? Because it would be a whole lot easier to stay in this job, which I like, than it would be to step out. But he was saying, nope, it's time to use you somewhere else. It's time to make faith come alive in women in a different way. So part of being able to find your purpose really does depend on you taking the time to have the conversation with God and not just be controlling and planning yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as Christian women, like even for myself, there's times where I'm not spending a ton of time in the word or praying. And so like that would be my first challenge to someone who really feels like they're not sure, is to spend more time in the word, spend more time in prayer, ask God for wisdom. Like the Bible literally says, if any of you lacks wisdom, to ask for it. So you can ask for that. You could ask God every day. And what if it takes you a year, but are you willing to continue to ask him like for direction and for clarity and to show you your purpose or to show you where you're supposed to be? You know, are you willing to like say, okay, God, here's my life. Like if you don't want me doing this, please like slam the door. Because that's sometimes kind of scary, you know, sometimes like we don't want to like, or like, no, I like this, you know, like you said about QVC, like once he was like, no, you're like,
it's like,
wait,
it's how I feed my children, God. Come on.
I know. So I do think, I mean, that's just the number one thing is spending time in the word and in prayer, you know, and so many people are like, oh, like waiting for a prophetic word from someone. And I'm like, dude, read your Bible. Like the Bible is the word of God. Like if you aren't reading your Bible, like you're probably missing out on hearing from God.
And spending time in community. Since the pandemic, it's been so easy for us to do church online, Bible studies online. And I'm not saying that they're bad. Listen, we're online right now having a conversation. You're online listening to this. It's
we
good.
tried to, you know, my husband suggested meeting in Florida, which maybe we should have done.
Telling you, once we get a budget for this podcast, that's what's happening.
Yeah, okay.
But you need to be in community. When I'm doing health coaching with women and I'm talking about the main components of reducing your stress and being healthy, one of them is relationship. We need like 6 hugs a day, I think is the research. Like you have to be face to face with people. So if you aren't in community, if you aren't in a church, and keep trying, go to numerous churches. Not every church is going to work for everybody, just like not every doctor is going to work for everybody. Get out there and find one that works for you. So being in community so you can hear other people. I literally roll slink out of bed every single morning onto my knees. In fact, at night, I throw a pillow on the ground. I have like 18 pillows. And I throw one of the pillows on the ground before I go to sleep so that first thing in the morning, I roll out of bed onto my knees. These days, my husband, Dan, like I'll put my hands on the bed and he'll grab them. And I say the same prayer over and over again. And part of it is, dear Lord, give me wisdom, patience, and understanding. You have to ask. And it's not just asking for, I want a new job or I want healing, but it's, Lord, what do you want me to know? What do you want me to know about my purpose? How do you see me? Where is my identity?
Yeah. That's amazing. And I love that you and Dan do that. Ryan and I pray together every morning too. It's not when I roll out of bed. It's usually like an hour later.
And it's interesting that you say that because, you know, we're in marriage groups and my husband and I have been through a lot of hard times that I've talked about publicly and then some things that nobody really knows about. And so we're always kind of trying to fine tune it and be in counseling and being in Christian groups. And I look at people like you. I have always held you and Ryan up as like couples goals. And I've always heard, you have to pray together. You have to pray together. And that's like kind of different from my husband. Like we'll pray, but he's not one to be like, hey, let's go sit down and pray together. So it's kind of new for him to kind of grab my hands and just be there in that moment with me. So it's pretty amazing. But I always want to be like you too.
Thank you. It's definitely not, I would say it's less natural for Ryan. When we got married, so my dad used to pray for me every night before I went to bed. So when we got married, my dad basically told Ryan, like, now you have to pray for Corie every night before you go to sleep.
Oh, I'm going to cry. I love your dad.
Excuse me. So Ryan does that. And then in the morning, we'll pray together. You know, we usually like read our Bible first. And then if he needs to like get off to do work or whatever, then we'll pray together. It is so important. And I think everybody's different. Like I would say like I was just raised different. So for me, like worship and prayer was just part of my everyday life. And it wasn't necessarily for Ryan. It was just different. Like he was still raised in a Christian home. So it's just finding that, like just being okay. Like it's okay. Like Ryan's on his own like journey, you know, to the Lord, and I'm on mine. And so what we do together like is super important. And then also like I still have to have my own, you know, journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, like you said, is part of your purpose. It can be very intertwined and seasonal. So maybe this is the time when what I feel like I am right now. Part of the reason I stepped back from QVC is because I have a couple of teenage girls, which has proved to be one of the most challenging times of my life. I know theirs so far. And I felt like the Lord was saying, listen, I need you to pour into these girls right now. And you can't do that working a corporate job at 40 hours a week. Yeah. So part of my purpose is in that. I do feel like it's important if you are trying to figure out what's my purpose, what am I supposed to be doing, to kind of get a mission statement. And so I've dialed mine in over the last couple of years to make faith come alive in others, help women gain confidence so they can create more space and joy. So my first purpose is to make faith come alive in others. And then it is to help women gain confidence so they can create more space for joy. And the way that all of that filters is, well, making faith come alive in others. That means I'm consistently preaching the gospel, whether it is one-on-one, whether it is in front of 1.5 million people on QVC or whatever it might be. And then the helping women gain confidence so they can create more space for joy really comes out of the health piece. For me, that's how God has gifted me in doing it, is helping women reduce stress, make room for rest, be able to hear the Lord, get healthy, nutrition, movement, and sleep. So I'm pretty clear. And then like Corie says, I can make the decisions on what's going to happen next. That's why it was kind of easy for me to decide, not easy, but at the end, decide to move on from QVC, because sure, I could do some of that there, but I was also selling shoes.
Yeah.
And that wasn't part of my purpose. So
Right.
how can somebody create a mission statement?
Okay, yours is like good, because I don't even know if I have one. I have like these bios. I had to send you my bio and stuff. But I would say like the easiest way. So what I do help women with is coming up with their values. So many people don't know their values. You might know.
I'm so glad you said that, because yes, you know your core values.
Yeah. You have to know your core values. And honestly, like I have them for like our family or for like our personal life. And then I have them for my business too. And a lot of them just cross over, which I think they should. But if you don't know your values, like besides, okay, if you're like a Christian, like obviously faith is a value to you. And if you're married, then your marriage is a value. But other than that, like what else? Like, is it health? Is it community? Is it, your church? Is it travel? Is it fun? Is it freedom? Like there's so many values out there. And so actually taking some time to be like, wait, actually, I do value that. And that is that's like one of the first things I have people do, because then when you go in to kind of start auditing your life and removing the things that don't matter, you'll start to see like, gosh, I've been spending so much time on this thing, but it's not a high value to me. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I feel like people need like 10 values, and like their like top 3 to 5 are like what they completely live by.
Absolutely. And the way that I have worked through values is to just start writing down the happiest times of your life, what makes you happy, what fills you up, what brings you joy. And then in another column, write down the things that you despise, that you detest, the things that bring you down, and it could be traits like lying, cheating, stealing. Absolutely. Right. But it can also be situations. Maybe you are super introvert and I would never go to a concert. I don't want to be out in that many people. So starting to get clear on what you love and what you don't love, and then those go into what your values are. Now, the one I feel like people get kind of tripped up on is the money piece, because you're like, well, okay, my core values are providing for my family. And I would say, okay, that's not that money is your core value. Your core value is love or comfort or security. It's not always just about the money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that could even go into like financial freedom, right? Because that's going to look different for everybody. It doesn't mean, I feel like for us, like financial freedom even comes down to one of the things you just said, like going to concerts. So that's something like, some people probably think we're crazy, like the amount of money we spend on going to concerts and traveling. But those are two things that we love doing, and we love doing with our kids even. And so it's something that we actually like prioritize. And so yeah, like you said, it's like having the financial freedom to do those things. Like those are the things that are more important to us. It's not the actual money.
Side note, Corie and I always text each other when Nuke is on the block or in town, because we bonded early in life over NKOTB.
Yes. And they're going to be in Vegas. So maybe we need a girls trip to Vegas.
Exactly. Like I said, we got to put it on the podcast budget. Yeah, you're right. And even concerts, I don't know if it's so much about the concert. It's about making memories.
Yeah.
That's a core value. Togetherness. That's a core value.
Yeah.
It's the same thing when you go through your fears, which can be part of what's not in your purpose, because your fear really isn't of dying. It's fear of leaving somebody. It's fear of being left. It's fear of being lonely. It's fear of letting somebody down. So when you really get down to it, that's when you can get closer on what your purpose is.
Yeah, for sure. And it honestly, like even knowing your purpose helps like combat some of those fears too. Cause it's like scary, like doing this, like now you like have been on TV for years. I think I might have like a major panic attack if I was going to be on TV. But this kind of stuff used to scare me to death. But it was like, okay, like if I'm writing this book and I'm putting out this planner and people are looking to me as like, I don't know, like a figure, like someone to look up to, like I have to put myself out there. So I have to get over that fear of man, because that's really what it is. Like I'm not scared of the video camera. Like the video camera can't do anything to me. It's the fear of man that's like stopping people. So when your purpose becomes greater than the fear of man, like a lot of fears that I used to have are like, they're gone now. It's not like they don't creep up. Like the more you're, like you talked about community. If you are out of community and you're home alone all the time, you get in your own head and you self-sabotage, and fear and anxiety start to like creep in. And so, you know, community is one of those things that can help keep you out of it. But yeah, anyways, my whole point was like knowing your purpose and actually walking it, not just knowing it and then not doing anything with it, will actually help like get rid of some of those fears.
And your purpose, here's what I can help you with what your purpose isn't. Your purpose isn't necessarily, it might be, but usually isn't, what my parents told me I should do, what I've always been doing, what I'm doing now because I feel like it's too scary to make a change, what I'm doing now because I feel like I'm too old to make a change. Like that's a lot of excuses and a lot of fear keeping you from your purpose. And especially if you're a faith-filled person, forces of evil and Satan are going to try and keep you away from your purpose. He wants nothing more than to keep you away from the path of the Lord.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I also truly believe that you will feel a peace that surpasses all understanding when you are following the Lord's purpose and plan. We know that from science, our bodies want to be healthy. They just default towards healthy. So when you start to get uncomfortable and you feel like different things happening in your body, that's your body's clue to you that, okay, you need to make a change because we want to live and we want to stay healthy. And the same thing in your spiritual walk. The Lord is going to allow you to become uncomfortable if you're not following his plan. So when you feel that sense of discontent or unease or uncomfortable or malaise over and over and over again, you have to listen to that, because that could be the Lord being like, listen, you're not lockstep with me. You're not following my plan and my purpose for you. And your purpose will also always be something that can bring greater good to the world.
Yeah.
Because that's what we're supposed to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, like one thing you just started to touch on, like when you know that you're supposed to be doing something and you aren't doing it, like that is going to bring more like fear and anxiety and shame into your mind than if you just like got over yourself and started doing it. Because that's like, you start to have like cognitive dissonance when you're like, yes, God made me to be this person. And then you don't actually go start being that person. Like you're gonna start stirring up all kinds of other stuff. So it's really getting clear on like knowing beyond the shadow of a doubt, okay, God wants me to do this. I don't even care if it's the tiniest baby step. I don't even care if it's going and like decluttering your closet so that you have some peace. Like just start being obedient and doing the little things, because the more obedient you are at the little things, like the easier it gets to do the big things, you know, and because it can start to get pretty scary. You start to do these big things and you kind of shrink back and get comfortable again. And you're like, okay, like, I don't know if I think this is good for the rest of my life.
And schedule it. It's just like when I work with women who need to start exercising and don't want to, because I think really pretty much most of us don't want to. You can make it a habit and you can learn to love it like I do, but I love the way that it makes me feel. I don't necessarily love it. You have to schedule it to begin with.
Yeah.
Until it becomes a mindset change and it's just what you do every day.
Right.
You have to put it down in a planner.
Yeah.
You have to write down, this is what and the same thing with discovering your purpose. Okay, I'm going to spend an hour brainstorming core values this day. Okay, I'm going to start writing up a couple of sentences or a paragraph that kind of, and then the next day, here's an hour, I'm going to do this. And then you make those steps. Okay, if this is my purpose, am I living that? Or do I need to look for a new job? Or do I need to get out of shift work? Or do I need to put up some boundaries in this relationship? And then start to write out those steps as well. There is so much power in taking pen to paper.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It uses a different part of of your brain. So, and I'm the same as you. Like I have to do stuff digitally. Like I have, a calendar on my phone. We have a family calendar, but like I have to write stuff down. And when you write stuff down, like it does use a different part of your brain and it helps you to remember it better. It helps you to like actually follow through with it better. So yeah, that's super important. And doing doing little, I remember one of my coaches called it mastery experiences. So people can try to like change their mindset, right? And they'll like, oh, I wrote my vision statement and I'm going to read it every day, like, which is great. But if you don't actually start doing little things that like tell your brain, like, yes, I'm doing this, like, you're not going to, like, you could read the same vision statement every day. But if you don't actually start doing the things on that vision statement, like nothing's going to change in your life. And so it can be, like you said, like just scheduling it. Like, okay, I'm going to spend 15 minutes a day, like working on my purpose. I'm going to get up 30 minutes earlier and pray and ask God to show me, like, whatever it is. And you don't have to do it all at once. That was kind of like, that goes back to my Simplicity Project book, was you don't have to give your life an extreme makeover. Like that's why most of those people on those shows just like go right back to where they were, right? Like when the home things, the body things, whatever it is that's out of control right now, if you try to like give it a complete overhaul really fast, it's probably not going to stick. And so you have to do something that's manageable. And when you're, raising kids or working full time, sometimes you only have an extra 15 or 30 minutes a day. And that's going to be better than not doing anything at all.
And it's priorities, which goes back to your core values. So if you only have that extra 15 minutes, or maybe you don't, I've been known to say that I wake up with time already gone. Like we've all said I need 25, 26 hours of the day. So when you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. But if you can filter it through your core values and through your purpose, then you're making the right decision. And I would challenge every single person out there that your health and your well-being, your relationship with the Lord, all need to take priority over just about everything else. And even being a servant, taking care of aging parents and taking care of children and things like that, you will not be able to serve them if you are not full enough, filled up enough to be able to overflow on them. So you have to make those decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And I would challenge people, like you brought up, being at the local church. I would challenge people, I think, especially after the pandemic. So many people like aren't part of a local church, and there's no perfect church. You're never going to find a perfect church. So find one that like theologically aligns with you and use your spiritual gifts at your church. Like I think it's so crucial, and there's probably people that will disagree. And I know everybody's got like church hurt and all this stuff, but it's like, you know what? Like the church was God's plan. It's literally what we're supposed to be part of. And so if you're like, well, I work a 9 to 5 and I don't use my purpose there, then go use your purpose at your church. Like serve at your church, be of value, because that honestly, that kind of pouring out for God, like fills you up.
So true. Your 9 to 5 doesn't necessarily have to be your purpose. Ideally, it will be aligned. And if you're really in tune with God and you're working on that, He can help you find the job, the career that'll be aligned with your purpose. But maybe He's using you in that space to get the paycheck so that you do have the time to, or the resources to give back to Him, to tithe, to be in that church. That church hurt thing is, I get frustrated because people will go to church once and be like, it's not for me. And it's like, you didn't date one person. Well, Corie almost did, but most people didn't date one person and that was it. It's the same thing with doctors. You don't just go to one and add that doctor, then you go to another one. Same thing with therapists. Try 4 or 5. It's important enough for you to keep going back and keep trying and finding the place where you fit.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And they'll help you. They'll help you find your purpose.
Yeah. And they're just people too. So if you expect them to be perfect, like you're never going to find one, you know what I mean? And so, maybe you need to figure out your values as far as church goes. There's a great book that one of my friends wrote. It's called Killer Church. And it's really just about like the church and what the church, like the design for the church. And I just think people have gotten so, I do know like there's church hurt. Like I hate even saying that because I feel like it's been thrown around so much. like even people that just are a little bit offended like to use that as an excuse. But I know there is valid things that have happened to people. We've had our own share of it, but I'm not going to let it keep me from doing like what God wants me to do. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I think it's just something people should prioritize. Yeah.
What else do you do in your life? Like, do you have a morning routine? Do you have an evening routine? Do you have a midday routine that helps you not only live out your purpose, but reduce stress in your life?
Yeah, I for sure have like morning and evening. And midday, I would just say kind of changes. The nice thing about having adult children is I don't have to take care of them during the day anymore. So I do have a lot of freedom. But yeah, in the morning, like for sure, it's like when I wake up, it's time in the Word. Like, and I read a lot. And like right now I'm doing the StRest, which is you read the Bible in 30 days. And so that's actually a lot. It's about
time consuming.
Yeah, it's about 2 hours. And so I'm doing that every morning. And then I spend time in prayer and journaling and usually reading like another book. And I don't spend a ton of time on that, but like, maybe like an additional 20 minutes reading something else before I jump into my work day.
Okay, stop for a second, because half of the audience just went, she spends 2 hours reading the Bible first thing in the morning.
But that's just this month. That's for 30. That's a reading plan. It's called the 30-day StRest, and you read the entire Bible in 30 days.
It's on YouVersion, by the way. I always tell people to get that app, YouVersion app.
And you can look it up. You're not studying, you're reading. So you're not looking at the little leaves, like you're looking at the whole tree. You know what I mean? And so you're just getting the whole story, the whole Bible in 30 days, which is really awesome. The first time I did it, it totally changed my life, because there's just something about reading the beginning and like the end within 30 days. Sorry. It's all fresh in your head, And so, yeah, it's just something I do at the beginning of each year. This is, I think, my 4th year doing it. But
every year I get a notification that she's invited me to join it. And every year I'm like, maybe, no, not this year. So just so you know,
you should do it.
I know I really should. But
it
again,
really
I have
is.
the little kids.
I'm telling you, it's life-changing. Yeah. And I do have friends that have little kids that do it. But so for me, this is the first year where I've committed to like, I'm not doing anything else until I finish my reading.
That's great.
I have the freedom
other than
to do
launching a book and running a business. Superwoman over here.
Well, I mean, but once I'm done, then I go do those things. And so I do have the freedom to do that. Now, in years past, it was like so for me, like the way I got through it was when I wake up in the morning, like before I even get out of bed, I would read 30 minutes. And I just read it on my app, which typically, like if I'm not doing the StRest, I'm reading my actual paper Bible. But for the StRest, because it's easier to like read fast, like there's a lot of skimming. Sometimes I'll even listen, but I would do 30 minutes before I even got out of bed just to make sure I got a good chunk done. And then anytime I had, I would put like the Bible app where typically my Instagram app was. You'd be amazed how many times you just open the Bible app and you're like, wow, I wasn't expecting that. Like you are so like everything you do is so automatic. So anyways, there's little tricks you can do. And so, in years past, the reading is definitely scattered throughout the day. But now just for this year, because the kids are all grown and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to not do anything else until my reading's done. So.
Wow.
Yes.
That's amazing.
And then,
I'll link in the show notes. First of all, spiritual gifts test, which is really, really important. I'll try to link YouVersion and the StRest as well. Cause now I'm thinking, I know I do a social media fast every single year for 21 days to a month. What a great time it would be then.
Yeah.
Specifically to get even deeper into it.
Yeah, it is. It's really cool. And what I'll do is like, if a verse pops out at me, I'll just like highlight it or screenshot it. Like this is not like the StRest is not about studying and taking your time. It's about just getting like the big chunks of the story all at once. And it like the first time I did it, I literally like when I finished, I cried. I was like, oh my gosh, it was just, I don't know. It's a really cool experience. So I do it every January just to kind of like give like the first of the year to God. And yeah, I love it. So it is intense. I'm not going to lie. There's some days where I'm like, oh my gosh, why am I doing it? Even this year, like on like day 3, I was like, maybe I'll just take the year off, but I'm like sticking to it.
So proud of you. You're such an inspiration.
I know. But I kind of went off of those are my main things for my routine. Because Ryan and I both work from home, like going to the gym or going for a walk, it's kind of always different because we like to do that together. And so if he has like a morning meeting, our walk might be a little later, or like yesterday, our walk wasn't until like 3 p.m, but like typically we try to do it in the morning. But I think because I've spent so many years like prioritizing these things, I am a little looser with them because I'm still committed to get them done. But I think when somebody's just starting out, like they really should have like a morning routine and an evening routine. And even if you have to like write 3 things on a sticky note and like put it by your bed or put it on your bathroom mirror, like just to get yourself to remember, it is so important, because so many things now are just habit and I don't have to think about them. And that's why you want the routine, is ultimately to create the habit. And then that takes away from that decision fatigue.
I love that you said that. Corie has made it to a place where she has had that mindset change that I was talking about, where of course I'm going to exercise. Like it's just, or of course I'm going to read the Bible. Of course I am. It's just a priority in my life. So it will get done. So she doesn't have to necessarily schedule it, except for the shred, because that's a big thing, chunk of time. If you're somebody who could easily be like, oh yeah, I'll probably work out, but then anything could come up and it would keep you from doing that, then you have to write it down. You have to schedule it.
Yeah. And I've had to become more intentional about like my exercise here, because when we lived in California, I literally just walked like every day. And here you can't. There's a lot of days you can't, because maybe there's a tornado, or maybe it's snowing, or maybe it's 110 and there's cicadas like dive bombing against you. You know what I mean? So
where do we live?
I don't know. I like want to retire in Florida. That is for sure. I mean, I know there's like bugs and alligators there, but at least there's like an ocean.
True. An island would do too, Corie. We could just find an island.
Yes.
That would work as well.
We'll just go buy a cheap one with all our podcast earnings.
There you go. Exactly. So what do you think people could do today to help them reduce their stress?
I mean, besides just like praying, obviously, I do think like one thing that I always tell people to start with is actually just take like an honest look at your life right now. You know what I mean? Like if you just need to sit down and like brain dump all of the things that you're like doing, or all the things you want to do, like so that you can start to get a better picture of what you're actually doing. I think that's literally the first step, because, and sometimes like if you have a to-do list that you're trying to keep in your head, the second you write it down, you will feel less stressed, because you will realize like, oh, it's actually not that much. Like we make things way bigger in our head than they actually are. But I think so many times like there's like a lack of self-awareness because we're so busy. As soon as you just take 15 minutes to kind of like jot down like, okay, this is what I want my life to look like, and these are the things I want to be doing, like that's going to help bring some clarity to what you're doing throughout your day.
Do you and Ryan, or do you do, plan for 2025 and then 5-year plan, 10-year plan? Do you do that?
We don't do, like we have 5 and 10 year, like we haven't even actually done that in a while. We do have like a 5 and 10 year, but like every year at the beginning of the year, we for sure do. We sit down and I have like a massive wall calendar, and I made it myself because I couldn't find one that was big enough. So,
and because she's amazing and she created planners, so she can do it.
Yeah. So yeah. And we just like have it printed at like a blueprint shop, because it's like 5 feet wide, 3 feet high. And so we
Girl,
sit
you gotta
down.
sell that on your website.
I do. It's on my website.
You do?
Yes.
I can't wait to link to that, and everybody needs to buy it.
It's just a PDF, and then you have it printed at a local, like you find a blueprint shop. It's literally $5 to have it printed. And so, because we looked into printing them ourselves, but like the printing and shipping would have been absolutely like we would have had to charge like $75 for it. So anyways, we sit down, we put in our like big important things first, right? We have like any trips we have planned, birthdays, that kind of stuff. And then we sit down and think about, okay, like what do we want to do this year? What's like our big like dream goals, and kind of map out a plan to get there. And then as far as my business goes, like we've kind of changed the structure. I used to do like big launches, and that took a lot of energy. And so now we're doing stuff that's a lot more automated so that my energy can be focused actually on my family first, and then like on my clients, like on my paying clients, instead of like all this crazy like business stuff. But either way, I love the big calendar because it gives me a bird's eye view of where I have like gaps, right? Like I know which months, like January and February, are crazy busy for us. So, and part of that is because I have like the book coming out in March and stuff. But then like right now, April and May, like there's not a ton going on. So I know mentally, like I'm pouring myself out right now, but I'm going to have time to like rest and recuperate once I get to April. You know what I mean? And so I think that's part of finding like those rhythms and finding that balance. And the funny thing is, like, this is something I always say, and I'm sure it makes people mad because it's super trendy. It's so trendy to say that balance is a myth. And I highly disagree because I don't think it's a myth. I think, yeah, if you want like a picture perfect, like stationary life, like that's a myth. But balance is about, like think of like a surfer or a skateboarder. They are balancing, but what are they doing? Like they're riding waves and they have to like lean and they have to turn and they have to put, more weight like on the end of the board or whatever. And so if you look at your life that way, and you start to see like, okay, I'm going to have to lean really heavy into like, if something bad's happening in your family, guess what? You're going to lean heavy into that. And you're going to let the other stuff just kind of deal with itself. And then as you start to bring that back into balance, then, maybe you need to like pour into your business. And so for me, it's like looking at, I know for the next, couple months, I'm going to be pouring a lot into my business. So I need to make sure I'm like finding time to pour into my family so that it's not just become this like, where is mom? Like what, like she only cares about her business. So I do think that like you can find balance as long as you know, like, okay, where are my priorities right now? What do I need to pour myself into? Like, what can I start like letting go of so that I can pour into something else? And then when am I going to like bring that back? I just think too many people have gotten lazy. And so they're like, oh, balance is a myth, so I'm not even going to try. You know what I mean? And there's just so much more to it.
I love that because I am with you. That is a myth. But balance, I think, is also a choice. You can choose to get your life in balance, just like we can choose to reduce the stress that we have in our life. We can choose to choose one thing over another so that we can get better sleep because we know that the sleep is going to help us long term in our life. It's not that it's easy.
Yeah.
It's going to take practice. And sometimes you'll fall off the surfboard.
Yeah. But there's no surfers just standing perfectly straight. You know what I mean? I think that's what people have got in their mind is they think that balance means everything is exactly the same. And I'm giving this much to my personal life and this much to my health. And like, it's like a straight line. And like, yeah, that's never going to work. Balance is like you're constantly like bending and swaying and leaning into something and backing off of something. It's always moving. And so when you can start to learn like the rhythm of that, it makes things so much easier.
So good. Just great. Tell people where they can find you, how they can work with you, connect with you, all those things.
My website, CorieClark.com. My name is spelled Corie. So my website has everything on there, my book, my program, all that kind of stuff. My new book that's coming out like shortly after this episode releases. And then Instagram is really where I like to hang out. Like that's where I do most of my like I'm the one answering my DMs. I'm very engaged. I love engaging with my community. So yeah, Instagram and my website. And Instagram is just my name.
And we will link all of that in the show notes as well. I love you.
I
love spending time with you. And we are going to put on the 5-foot calendar that next time I have you on the podcast, we're someplace warm.
Yes, please. Thank you so much for having me. It's been so much fun.
Absolutely. Love you.
Love you.
Coming up on the next episode of StRest, we talk to the remarkable Amberly Lago. She is a leading expert in resilience and
transformation. Listen, if you have ever gone through any type of chronic disease or debilitating injury, or you're looking down the barrel of having to go into surgery, you've got to hear this next episode. Her 34 surgeries this woman has been through. She's got plates and pins, and she's been a survivor of sexual abuse and divorce as well. She's now a best-selling author. She's a TEDx speaker. She's a podcaster, and she is going to share with you all the joy that you can find in the journey. That's coming up in the next episode of StRest.
Thank you for joining me on this journey to reduce stress and make room for rest. Remember, you're not alone. Keep coming back, share your story, ask for help, and give yourself grace.